Johnny's always being made fun of by the neighborhood boys because he's so stupid. And their favorite trick to play on him is they put out a nickel and they put out a dime, and Johnny always takes the nickel. Well, one day they were playing this trick with a new neighbor boy, and Johnny takes the nickel. The guy pulls him aside and he says, "Johnny, you know that nickel is worth less than that dime, even though that nickel is bigger." He smiles, he says, "Yeah, I know." He says, "But if I took the dime, they'd quit doing the trick, and so far I've made $20. So a guy gets on the plane for his first time, and he's sitting next to little Johnny. And he says, "So I've heard that you speak to your fellow passenger, and it will make the time go by faster." And Johnny closes his book, and he says, "Well, what would you like to talk about?" He says, "Nuclear energy." He says, "Okay, that's great." He goes, "But let me ask you a question." He says, "So if you've got a deer and a cow and a horse, and they all eat grass," he says, "you got a deer that excretes pellets, you got a cow that excretes a flat patty, and then you've got a horse that excretes grass clumps." He goes, "Why is that?" And the guy says, I have no idea." He says, "Well, how can you talk about nuclear energy when you don't know shit?" Johnny and his dad were in the backyard, and Johnny kills a honeybee, and his dad gets mad. He says, "That's it, no honey for a month for you." Well, then a little while later, he has a butterfly, and he's ripping the wings off the thing. His dad says, "That's it, no butter for a month." Well, later on that evening, they're in the kitchen, and Johnny's mom's cooking supper, and Johnny and his dad are sitting at the table, and there's a cockroach that runs across the kitchen floor. And Johnny's mom runs over there, jumps on top of it, and kills the cockroach. Johnny looks up at his dad. He says, "Well, do you want to tell her, or should I?" Teacher says, "Hey, little Johnny, who's the president of the United States?" He says, "I don't know, miss." She said, "Johnny, you need to focus a little bit more on your studies." Little Johnny says, "Hey, miss, who's Angela?" She says, "I don't know." He said, "You need to focus a little bit more on your husband." Well, Johnny runs into the kitchen and he sees that his mom's baking a cake. He says, "Mom, I think I'm going to go into my room. I'm going to play for about an hour, but afterwards, I'd really like a piece of that." So about an hour goes by, and his mom comes in with the piece of cake, and he smiles. He says, "You know, Dad, he sure is right." His mom says, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, Dad said anytime you ever want to get a piece around here, you're going to have to play for about an hour." I see that the Powerball right now is at around 115 million. I personally will never buy a lottery ticket ever again. When I was younger, my dad gave me money to go pay for the electric bill. I took all that money and I put it on a lottery to win a brand new Chevy Silverado. And when I got home, I told my dad what I did. I was all excited, and he whooped my butt. He said, "If there's not a brand new Chevy Silverado in our driveway tomorrow morning, I'm going to get you even worse." I woke up in the morning, I looked out the window, and there was a brand new Chevy Silverado in our driveway. I was so excited. I ran downstairs. Turns out they were there to turn off our electric. My dad whooped me again. I'm not buying any more lottery tickets. It was Halloween day, and all the kids were bringing in little presents and treats for the teacher. And one kid brought an apple, another kid brought a Snickers bar, another kid brought in Kit Kats, one other kid brought in those popcorn balls, and Johnny gave his teacher, he had this little bag that he gave her, and he told her, "You can peek in it, but don't open it up till you get home." Well, she looks in there and she says, "Johnny, you're staying after class." So Johnny stays after class, and she says, "What?" She pulls him out. She goes, "Crotchless panties. Why did you get me crotchless panties?" He said, "Well, I figured you being a witch and all, it'd give you a tighter grip on your broom." Well, Johnny's in health class, and they're talking about human anatomy and body parts. And at the end of class, little Johnny and Susie were talking, and she said, "You know, I don't know what a penis is." And little Johnny says, "You know, I don't know either." He says, "Well, I'm going to go home and I'm going to ask my big brother." So he goes home, asks his big brother, and his big brother smiles. He says, "You know what, little Johnny?" He says, "I'm not only going to tell you what it is, I'm going to show you." So he pulls his pants down and he says, "You know what that is? That is a perfect penis." He says, "Okay." So he goes back to school. He says, "All right, Susie, let's go behind the dumpster." He says, "I'm going to show you." He says, "Not only going to tell you, but I'm going to show you." So he goes back behind the dumpster, pulls his pants down, and he says, that right there is a penis. And if it was 3 inches shorter, it would be a perfect penis. Growing up, Johnny had always wanted to be a firefighter. Well, when he was old enough, he finally got that job, and he came home and told his wife how excited he was. And he says, all right, from here on out, if we're ever going to make love, he says, I'm going to yell Bay 1, and we're going to rip off all our clothes. When I yell Bay 2, that means we're going to hop on the bed, and when I yell Bay 3, we're going to go at it. So after his first day of work, he comes home, and he's standing there at the door, and he tells his wife, he says, Bay 1. She stripped off her clothes. He said, Bay 2. They both hopped on the bed. He said, Bay 3. And they started going at it. They're going at it for about 5 minutes, and she starts screaming, Bay 4, Bay 4, Bay 4. He says, what do you mean? What's Bay 4? She said, Bay 4 means needs more hose. You ain't even close to the fire. Little Johnny's teacher was going around the classroom asking each one of the kids what they would like their spouse to be like when they grow up. Well, little Susie said, I'd like my husband to be a doctor. Little Jimmy said, yeah, and I'd like my wife to be a nurse. And it went on, and so on, until she got to little Johnny, who was asleep in the back of the class. Teacher says, hey, little Johnny, what would you like your wife to be like when you grow up? I would like my wife to be like the moon. The teacher, knowing that Johnny pretty much always thinks outside the box, says, oh, you mean you'd like her to be bright and beautiful? No, that's not it at all. I want a wife that comes at night and is gone in the morning when I wake up. Old Johnny was coming home after a long night with a girl. And as he was walking up on the front porch, he noticed his grandpa was sitting there in the chair. His grandpa says, little Johnny, how'd you get that black eye? He says, well, last night I was with a girl and we were messing around and having fun. And after we got done, she told me that I was easily the biggest that she has ever been with. And apparently, I shouldn't have told her ditto. Family goes on vacation and they stop at a hotel for the night. And the dad goes to check in and he talks to the guy at the front desk and says, hey, I'm here with my family, so make sure that the porn is disabled. And the guy says, it's not disabled. It's regular porn, you sick bastard. Little Johnny and a rich man are discussing what they're going to get their girlfriends for a birthday present. And little Johnny asks the rich man, he says, what are you getting your girlfriend for her birthday? And he says, well, I'm going to get her a Mercedes and a diamond ring. And he looks at him and says, well, why both? He says, well, first I'll give her the diamond ring, and if she doesn't like that, then she can return it while she's driving the Mercedes. He says, oh, okay. He says, so little Johnny, what are you getting your girlfriend? He says, well, I think I'm going to get her a pair of slippers and a dildo. He says, well, why are you getting her both of them? He says, well, I'm going to give her the slippers first, and if she don't like them, she can go screw herself. One day, little Johnny's teacher was sick, and so they had a substitute. Little Johnny decided to come in a little bit late. He comes in, the teacher says, what's your name? He says, my name's Johnny. She said, where have you been? He said, I was on top of Blueberry Hill. She says, you sit down here in the front of the class. He sits down. And 10 minutes later, another kid comes in, and she says, what's your name? He says, my name's Billy. She said, where have you been? He said, I was on top of Blueberry Hill. She says, so you sit right here in the front of the class. So he sits down. 10 minutes later, another kid comes in. She says, now what's your name? He says, my name's Tony. She said, Tony, where have you been? He said, I've been on top of Blueberry Hill. She says, you sit right down here in the front of the class. Well, 5 minutes later, a girl walks in. She says, now what's your name? She said, Blueberry Hill. Hey, John, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
There's these two ladies that are out golfing, and they're both in sports therapy, and the one girl gets up there and she swings that club and just smacks the ball right into this foursome of guys and nails one of the guys, and she looks over there and sees him grabbing at his groin, bending over in pain and screaming. So she runs over there, and the guy's kind of embarrassed, and she says, hey, I can help. I'm in sports therapy, and I can relieve your pain. And the guy looks up at her. He says, no, it's fine. But then he saw that she was beautiful, and so he lets her help. So she takes down his pants and starts massaging his balls, and she says, oh, how does that feel? You feeling any better? He says, oh, that feels great, but I think my thumb's still broken. Little Johnny and his buddy Tony were out walking through the forest one day when Tony bent down to pick up a stick and was bit by a rattlesnake right in the pecker. He says, "Little Johnny, we got to call the doctor. I don't think we have much time." So little Johnny gets the doctor on the phone and tells him what happened. And the doctor says, "Well, little Johnny, there's only one thing you can do. You're going to have to suck the poison from where he was bit." He says, "Doc, are you sure there's nothing else we can do?" The doctor says, "Well, Johnny, I'm afraid not." He says, "Okay, Doc." He gets off the phone and Tony says, "Well, what happened? What did he say?" Well, Johnny says, "I'm sorry, Tony. The doctor says you're going to die."